Jötunn is upon us, and finally, we have a legitimate competitor for the Ikelos shotgun in the secondary weapon slot. Let's take a look at how to get it, how to use it, and how to be as effective as possible with it. Let's get started. In order to get this weapon, you'll first need to get your Guardian at or near the power cap of 650, since the activity this weapon drops from is balanced for maximum power Guardians. I would also recommend having every other Black Armory Forge unlocked on each of your Guardians. This is crucial to maximizing your chances of acquiring the weapon for reasons that we'll discuss shortly. Next, you'll need to see Ada 1 in the tower and pick up a powerful weapon frame from her. It doesn't matter which frame you get, but it must be powerful. If you craft that weapon in Berguzia Forge, the fourth and final forge, which just recently opened at the bottom of the map in the EDZ, you've got a small percentage chance of being awarded Jötunn at mission completion. It does not drop from the forge itself as an engram, it is simply given to you when the event concludes. Because you need a powerful frame, and not just any frame, this means you're hard capped at 2 attempts per week per character. If one of the powerful frames you need is locked behind a forge that you don't have unlocked, then that's even fewer chances at Jötunn. And no, before you ask, you can't repeat the non-powerful version of any weapon frame for a chance at Jötunn. It has to be a powerful frame. By the way, if you don't already know, this exact same process is what you would follow for Le Monarch. However, you get that weapon at the other 3 forges and not Berguzia, so that's the only difference. First 3 forges will give Le Monarch as a small percentage chance. Berguzia will give Jötunn as a small percentage chance. Next up, let's talk stats. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into numbers here just because, well, Bungie doesn't really give you many statistical numbers within the stats screen for a weapon anyways. Besides, even if they did, could you tell me right now how far away 10 meters is in-game, or 15, or 20? I'm sure that the vast majority of you could not. So we're going to deal with relative numbers, just relative made-up words and hand-wavy things to give you a better idea of the stats of this weapon and what you can expect from it. But we're not going to go deep into this weapon will deal 43,000 damage to a 650 enemy in Berguzia Forge. It legitimately does not matter. How much health does an enemy have? We don't know. So we're going to just speak relatively here, like number of shots to kill in general, things like that, the actually important info. Minor enemies are all gonna die in one shot, unless they're a yellow bar variant of a basic enemy like you might find in the Dreaming City during some public events. They might take 2 shots, otherwise it's pretty much always a single hit from Jötunn. Large size red bar enemies like ogres, knights, and the like will oftentimes take multiple shots from this weapon to take down, think on the order of 2 or 3. Orange bar enemies actually follow a pretty similar rule of thumb. Usually 1 or 2 shots will do the trick, plus or minus a melee hit or something along those lines, with some enemies taking closer to 3 shots, but usually not much more. Yellow bar enemies are all over the place. Some go down in as few as 2 shots, like we just mentioned, but most are on the order of 3 or more, and bosses, of course, take a lot more than that, but they are in a separate class entirely. Jötunn deals more damage than any other fusion rifle in its slot, and from a much greater range to boot. Thanks to the tracking properties of its projectile, and the fact that all your damage is in that one shot, as opposed to the multiple small shots you'd have in your standard fusion rifle, Jötunn is in a lot of ways the most consistent fusion rifle to boot. The real rub of Jötunn's existence is, well, why would you use it over Telesto? Telesto's got worse damage per shot, but with a catalyst installed, it's got a bigger magazine and more reserve ammo with close enough damage in a lot of situations. Telesto is easier to use at very short range due to faster and multiple projectiles. It's also a faster charge time and a faster reload speed to boot. Guardians are killed in one trigger pull of both weapons within their effective ranges. In regular PvE, most content is not difficult enough for any damage disparities to matter all that much anyways. In Gambit, Jötunn will kill a small blocker in one shot if you wait for the burn damage, while Telesto will require a swap to your kinetic to finish them off or just a simple melee. Similar disparities arise with medium and large blockers as well. Regardless, these weapons are close. Really close, and both take up your exotic slot as well, which means no Thunderlord, no 1K voices, no Whisper, no Queenbreaker, no other insert broken heavy exotic here. Also, no Izanagi's Burden either, if that's the kind of gun that you want to run. Is Jötunn truly a big enough upgrade from EP Shotgun against hard to kill enemies, or is it at least a worthy side grade? Is it worth using over Telesto? In Crucible, is it worth not running over a shotgun? Unfortunately, none of these questions have easy answers, but honestly, that's a good thing. It means Bungie did a good job making a weapon that is sufficiently overpowered and broken, while it's legitimately competitive with, or at least similar to, other things, while at the same time, not really succumbing to power creep either. Bungie found a really good balance for this weapon, as bogus and BS as it might be in game modes like Gambit or Crucible. When comparing Jötunn to the EP Shotgun as well as Telesto, there's only a couple of important factors in determining which one is right for you and in which scenario. First, how much ammo economy versus raw damage output do you need? And second, at what range do you want this weapon to be useful? On the topic of ammo economy, EP Shotgun, or Icalo Shotgun, whatever you want to call it, or frankly any shotgun in general, is going to fare worst here outside of Crucible, ignoring Crucible. Even with Trench Barrel active, one shotgun headshot does not equal one shot from Telesto, much less one shot from Jötunn. EP Shotgun does of course win in DPS, thanks to its rate of fire, so if full team boss burns with Wells of Radiance are your goal, then of course look no further than EP Shotgun, but if you're looking to deal really big damage to hard to kill enemies from a little safer distance than what the EP Shotgun can accomplish, it's time to start seriously considering your exotic fusion rifles. If you're debating between these two weapons, Jötunn is going to win out in the raw damage per shot department, but this difference is mitigated if you have the Telesto Catalyst, which offers increased magazine size and reserves. So you've got to ask yourself, are you regularly going to take advantage of that much extra ammo that the Telesto may offer you, assuming you even have the Catalyst? In my opinion, there isn't any reasonable scenario where these extra reserves are gonna matter a whole lot. Even if you do have the extra reserves, you're not gonna burn through all of that in one boss burn outside of maybe Gambit. But in that situation, does it really matter? For most players, probably not. Probably not. Due to Telesto's high recoil, there comes a range where you can no longer hit all of your shots consistently, harming the weapon's usefulness. Jötunn, on the other hand, doesn't have any sort of damage drop-off at all. You can use it at whatever range you want, and thanks to the tracking nature of its projectiles, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to miss a shot from medium range and beyond. Enemies may dodge your shots, sure, but that's not so different than any other weapon. This consistency and this range is what makes the gun truly something special in PvE. It's got a short dead zone where the tracking doesn't really kick in properly, and sometimes it feels like the projectiles are pulling away from where you're aiming rather than towards them, but that's not a huge issue. I've gone ahead and drawn this simple chart showing my opinion on how Jötunn stacks up with Telesto and the EP Shotgun in terms of their effective use ranges. Again, this is not a real number, this is not a real unit, this is not based upon any actual statistic in the game. This is more just my subjective opinion upon where these guns are truly effective and where you're going to actually end up applying them in the actual game of Destiny, right? This is not the numbers game, this is not the pen and paper game, this is the true, what are you going to do in the real game? What are you going to actually use? How is it really going to play out? And this is kind of what I've come up with thus far. The EP Shotgun is, of course, good at close range, at point blank range actually, out to a short distance, and then it drops off to 0 damage rapidly. The Telesto is good from point blank to somewhere between what I'd eyeball as short and medium range. Once you're comfortably in medium range though, the recoil starts becoming too high to consistently hit all your shots on smaller enemies. Sure, you can use it against Cabal Centurions or whatever from a little longer range just because they're so fat, but good luck hitting wizards consistently. Jötunn, on the other hand, it's a bit more complicated. At absolute point-blank ranges, this gun might as well be hit scan. You can hit anything you want in PvE from this range, and you don't have to worry about the travel time at all. You don't have to worry about the tracking either. However, once you get into the sweet spot for Telesto, you reach this small zone where enemies are too close to you for Jötunn to lock on properly, but too far away to consistently get shots on. This isn't a huge deal in PvE, but in PvP, in Crucible, namely. This dead zone is going to get you killed a lot versus enemy guardians when you're first learning this weapon. Once you get past this dead zone though, the tracking starts kicking in properly, and it's legitimately hard to miss with this weapon since it does most of the aiming for you. At super long ranges, the gun goes from being really good to just okay, in the sense that guardians and some other nimble PvE enemies are going to be able to dodge out of the way of your shots easily and efficiently. For example, you're going to have a rough time trying to hit a fallen captain, teleporting minotaurs, or of course guardians in PvP. You've got to keep in mind though, that this isn't really a downside of Jötunn. The fact that you can even use it at that range at all, compared to its competitors, is proof enough of the raw strength of this weapon. Jötunn is, quite simply, massive damage in an ammo-efficient frame, usable effectively at all ranges in PvE. Unless you have some other exotic you need to use for a specific reason, or you need the EP shotgun to burn down certain bosses, I see no compelling reason to use anything besides Jötunn right now. It's just so unilaterally good and so safe that it's never a wrong decision to bring it in either PvE or Gambit. If nothing else, it's a decent replacement for a lot of heavy weapons as a boss damaging tool, if you don't have any heavy ammo, of course. In Gambit, you basically just use it to clear majors whenever one spawns. Conveniently, wizards, cyclopes, by the way, that's the plural of cyclops, it's cyclopes, I had to look that up, and centurions, by the way, they all die in a single shot. Many other enemies are 1 plus a few kinetic shots, or 2 plus a few kinetic shots or melees or whatever. They're generally in that ballpark. Sometimes 3, but that's only a couple of enemies, which I can't remember off the top of my head because of course I'm ad-libbing right now, so oh well. Anyways, I generally wouldn't recommend using Jötunn against Guardians in Gambit just because they're really skinny, they're really fast, and they're generally going to be very hyper-aware of you. They're going to be doing everything they can to dodge you. If they know you're invading with Jötunn, it's very easy for them to get around that and to play around that and to punish you for using it. The only times I would actually pull it out for an invasion would be if the enemy is unaware of me and it's a free kill, or if I'm being invaded and they're using a Queen Breaker to invade me and I want to take a really unfair trade with them. Because if they're standing still, aiming down sights with a Queen Breaker, if I pop out for just a millisecond with Jötunn to get a quick shot off, I'm gonna die to that Queen Breaker for sure, but Jötunn is gonna lock on, and more often than not, it will get that trade. And in some situations, a trade is the best you can hope for against a Queen Breaker. In Crucible, things get a lot more confusing. Guardians are, of course, tall, thin, quick moving, meaning that it's oftentimes tough for the Jötunn projectile to actually connect with a target if they're moving effectively. In many situations, the lock-on mechanic will hurt you more than help you. If you try to lead your rockets as if you were playing a game like Quake or Titanfall, your rocket, again, quote-unquote, will veer towards and then past your target and then outright miss a lot of the time. Most of this, though, applies to that bad range on Jötunn that we mentioned earlier. That bad range, in my experience, is roughly the distance from the back of the elevator to the opposite wall over on Firebase Echo. Backing up a few steps onto the platform behind the elevator is right around where that optimal range begins. If you're at the entrance to that hallway, and anyone is beyond the heavy ammo, as another quick example, you're right in the sweet spot for this weapon. It's completely unfair trying to shoot this weapon at people on that heavy ammo straight down the hallway, even all the way to the end of the other box. If they don't get behind the box, they're almost assuredly going to get locked on to and die to Jötunn. It's very, very unfair, and I found myself giggling like an idiot as I was getting kills with this thing because it just felt so cheap and so cheese. When using this weapon, both in Crucible and in general, aim is almost completely unnecessary. It's very much a quick fire and forget style weapon that either will or will not yeet somebody directly into the astral plane. In my limited time in Crucible with it thus far, some of my best kills with the Jötunn came when I had the following mentality. I should only focus on using this weapon whenever I can make some sort of fast peek or bait somebody into chasing me fast around a corner. I want to catch people sprinting, or in some other action that prevents them from expediently jumping. I want them to think that I don't have a shotgun, I'm not waiting around the corner, I'm straight up running, because that means they're going to chase harder, and then I can turn on them and Jötunn them, again, straight into the astral plane. That is when I've found the most success with this weapon. As soon as I start to rely on it too heavily, or start treating it as a main weapon like you might for a shotgun, like the filthy Titan skater that I am, I found myself running into a lot of trouble, so avoid that as best you can. Also worth noting is that this gun has a small but usable area of effect, or AoE, if you shoot the ground in both PvE and Gambit. In Crucible though, that really just does not seem to be the case. I've had many times where I've shot people right in their feet, right between their feet, right next to their feet, whatever, and I deal like 6 damage. I don't really know why this thing seems to deal very little splash damage. Maybe I truly am missing, or maybe the fact that this is a semi-hybrid peer-to-peer game and just weirdness happens with projectiles. Maybe there's something there, I don't know, but I had a very rough time trying to splash people and shoot them in the feet like I would with a rocket launcher in any other game. So, trust me, this thing is not very forgiving in close-range fights. You need to go for a direct if you get caught out and you have this thing out. Like, you gotta go for it, or hope you have a quick draw, something in your primary slot you can go to, but really that's probably not gonna happen. Just, you gotta go for the direct. You gotta lead your shot a lot, even at point blank, against Guardians specifically, and you gotta pray. But, all in all, before we ramble much longer about this weapon, because we're passing like 17 minutes here, I'll leave you with this. In terms of ease of use, cool factor, fun factor, and effectiveness, the Jötunn is a top-tier weapon through and through. It has some weaknesses, sure, but every weapon has a few areas where it has a weakness. That's okay. Everything is imperfect in some way. The few areas where this weapon is weak are hardly enough reason to skip it, and the only real reasons I could see myself switching away from it would be because I'm in dire need of a different exotic, like maybe a Queenbreaker in Gambit, for example, or if I really needed the EP shotgun for some other reason. Outside of that, this thing is a beast. I personally prefer it to Telesto, although it's not terribly better, it's just kind of a side grade that does the things that I like better, so I prefer it. And it's just moderately better for general use in my opinion too, but either way, I strongly recommend you grind the Jötunn out for yourself if you don't already have one. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you've learned something new. If you enjoyed this exotic review and you want to see more videos like it, please let me know in the comment section below. If you loved it, I of course exist on Patreon just like every other YouTube nerd these days, and I also stream on Twitch a few days a week as well. That is kind of my primary content creation source right now. It's a little bit less YouTube, a little bit more Twitch right now, but we're trying to go back to about 50-50 as best we can. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.